Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Portrait Session here on the Improved Photography Network. I am Erica Kay, and as always, I'm joined by Mr. Nick Page. Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Doing pretty good.
Good. All right, guys. Well, today we're kind of doing a follow-up to the show that we did last week when we were talking about speedlight modifiers. So today we are actually going to talk about some of the ways that you can get creative with your speedlights and your modifiers. And we're actually going to do this by looking at some of our favorite photos that we have taken with speedlights and with modifiers. So, it's kind of a very visual episode. So in order to kind of follow along, you might want to either pull up the show notes or watch the video because we are recording video today. So if you go to improvephotography.com/TV, you will be able to take a look at the video that we're doing and be able to follow along with the photos that we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so let's start by talking about some one light setups. This is just using one speed light to create a certain look that you want for a photo. So Nick, you have a couple of photos here. So why don't you start by talking about this beautiful sunset photo that you have here?
Well, they're kind of all sunset photos.
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
So I think my most popular one light setup is just to backlight, to silhouette the couple or person by throwing just a bare speed light back behind them. So the photo that I'm looking at, it's a wedding couple where she's got this really long veil and it was sunset. We were in a vineyard at a winery. It was just, we had awesome light. And to really bring out the saturation of the sky, I wanted to really overpower the ambient light. That way I could dim down the frame to where it's just that sky. And then I threw my speed light back behind the couple. I silhouetted them. It illuminates the veil really well. Had them kiss. It's so romantic and so beautiful. and that is kind of it's my one trick that I pull out every single wedding because it's really quick. It's really easy, requires no modifiers. And it's just got this moody, romantic thing going on. And so I bust that out anytime I've got a good sunset going and the couple is going to be against a really dark background because if they are dark, the background is dark. You need to do something to separate them from that. And backlighting is the most perfectest way ever to do that. So this first photo that we're looking at, that's exactly what I did. Just one single bare speed light back behind them, shooting at the couple. I put the couple between me and the speed light, and voila, everybody thinks Nick is amazing. So that's
it's beautiful.
Yes, that's the first setup.
Perfect. And then you have another one that's a really nice sunset, more of a wide angle shot.
Yes.
You did not separate them using backlight for this one. So what'd you do here? So
my other most common setup is it's basically the light on a stick thing where I throw my little, it's a 24-inch speed box that sets up and tears down really fast. I love this thing because it's small and it's portable and it's quick. And what I do is I put that on the end of a monopod with a speed light. And then I have my assistant, Annalise, go in really close to the subject, to the couple or the person or whatever. And I have her just boom the light right over top of them. I get the light really close, so it's still kind of soft. But the problem with that is that, big, wide environmental portrait like what we're talking about, she is going to be in the frame. So in order to make that work, I take two shots. I take the first shot. And before I take the first shot, I say, okay, you guys need to hold really still for a second. So I take that first shot with Annalise in the frame, illuminating them. And then as soon as I take that first shot, she sprints out of frame. I hold the composition exactly the same. And then I take a second photo with the exact same settings, only they're not being illuminated. And what I can do is now I can layer those in Photoshop, align them because I was handheld and it's not perfectly aligned. And then I can basically just mask out my assistant holding the light. That way I get that really soft light with that fall off that we were talking about. Only there's no apparent light source in the shot. So it's a really cool effect. It's kind of my go-to trick It makes me look really fancy when I'm doing it in person, and I get to watch Annalise try to sprint out of frame, and it's a lot of fun that way. But it's kind of my go-to trick anytime I'm doing those wide environmental portraits where you can't get your light close enough to them. Mm-hmm. This works really well for getting your light source close and still getting that soft light, only not having your light source in the shot.
Right. I do the same thing when I do the wider one light setups, or I mean multiple lights as well. But for example, the one that I have with the bride who is kind of twirling around in this big, what is this place called? It's in the Ohio State House, and it's the rotunda in the State House. But it's a beautiful location. And I love photographing there, but it can be tricky because it's really dark. So you definitely have to have some lights in there. So the first image that I have here is the bride. She was a figure skater, and she obviously I had to make her, twirl around and do some type, dancer type stuff because that's just who she is. But so I put her in there in the middle of the rotunda, and I had her just kind of twirling around and like flailing her dress around. And I had my assistant with a speedlight on light stand with a 36-inch octabox. She was pretty close to her to get nice lighting because it is a really big area. So I had to do that same thing. I took 2 shots, one with her in there lighting her, and then the other one with my assistant out, and then put them together in Photoshop as well.
That's cool. And when you're a little side note, when you're doing this technique indoors, it gets way more complicated because the way the light bounces around off of walls and stuff, sometimes the light that's being cast on the wall in one frame is not going to be the same as it is in the other. So especially if you're using some kind of shoot through umbrella, I've made that mistake where I thought, oh yeah, this will stitch together so nice. And it didn't work at all because my light was going everywhere. And by the time I masked in my other exposure, it just did not work very well.
Right.
Using an octabox that's only going to send the light in one direction is the way you kind of have to do it. So good choice on your modifier there, Erica.
Thank you. Another indoor portrait that I did with just one light is the portrait with the couple in the movie theater. I've had a lot of people ask me about this one since I posted it a few months ago, and it was just a one light setup. I had a speed light with the mag sphere on it, and I had my assistant holding it. And kind of up and over top of them. So it was almost pointing down on them. But because the background was so dark, I could get away with just doing one shot and then just masking him out or cloning him out.
Cool.
Because there was not a lot of detail in the background. So if you have, an environment like that where it's super dark, except for your subject and maybe just a little bit of the area around your subject, you can get away with not having to do 2 shots. And then you can just remove your person holding your light or your light in general in post-processing.
Very cool. So to help you guys visualize what a mag bounce or the light sphere from MagMod is, I know this is kind of a step back to last week, but mine came. So here is the mag sphere. And you can see exactly what it does. It's very much like a Gary Fong or something, but essentially what it does is it turns your speed light into a light bulb. And what's nice about that is that it goes in all directions, and it kind of mimics, the light that we're used to seeing. When you have a light bulb, it kind of radiates out in all directions. And, if you get this close enough, it's not a harsh light. It's definitely softer than a bare speed light. So it's really nice for shots like what Erica just posted here. Awesome. Excellent shot.
Thanks.
Very cool.
Thank you.
So one more single light shot that I wanted to show you guys. And this is just one where I'm overpowering the ambient light like I really love to do. This is the shot of the football player kind of looking over me with the football stands in the background. Really simple setup. Again, it's basically just my 24-inch speed box again, set to 1-to-1 power as strong as I could get it. Got it really close to him, and then I shot at wide angle, so he's looming over the camera. And in shots like this, another little tip is anytime that you are down low and you have the subject standing over you, if they're just standing straight, it's going to look like they're leaning back. So you have to have them bend at the waist and kind of literally loom over you.
Towards you, yeah.
But this shot, it's basically just a single light source turned all the way up as powerful as I could get it, and overpower in the ambient light. That way it brings in all that saturation from the sky. The fall off is really dramatic because I had it so close to him. So many times, one light is enough. A lot of times, especially when you're shooting an event or anything where speed is kind of important, typically you can get the results you want from just a single light. And, you know, when we say a single light, it can be multiple flashes, like if you're using a triple flash bracket or something like that just to get more power. But if your light is coming from one direction, you have less that can go wrong, and it's just so much faster. When you start incorporating more lights, you're opening up the door for lots of troubleshooting. So unless you've got lots of time, that one light setup is most often going to work the best for you.
Yeah, and something you could do with your one light setup is really try to capture the environment. So one of my favorite things to do, since I photograph mainly in the city, I love to go downtown and photograph like at dusk. So the sun has already set, the sky is kind of dark, and we get all these really awesome lights happening in the city, car lights, and we have really cool lights on buildings and lights that go across our streets downtown. So the picture of the couple with the purple lights coming over top of them, that's exactly what I did here. We were just in the middle of the street, cars were driving by. I had one speed light with a mag bounce, again, kind of up and over them a little bit. And I had a kind of a tighter crop so that I didn't have my assistant in it. And because we were in the middle of the street and we didn't have a lot of room to work with. So by exposing for the ambient light, I exposed for like the headlights and the purple lights that are going above them, and then matched my the power of my speed light to give a nice consistent light on them. I was able to get really awesome light both in the background and on the couple by balancing out the ambient light with the power of my speed light.
Very cool. So as kind of a transitional photo, I'm going to talk about the photo where I have the bride silhouetted against this stack of wine barrels. So technically it looks kind of like one light source, but it's actually two. I have a speed light literally just resting on the barrels on the inside, pointed back against the wall behind her. And the reason that this photo worked so well is because of all the shapes and interesting nooks and crannies that the light could find. And so it worked just really well to fill in all of those nooks and crannies, and then it becomes about the pattern that's created. So silhouetting a subject can be such a cool, dramatic, moody look that it's just one of my go-tos. A quick tip for anytime that you're silhouetting a single subject, you always have to have them profile to you. That way you have some kind of definition of their face. If in this same photo she was looking at camera, her head would just be a round blob. But because she's looking over her shoulder, you see the nose, you see the profile, it makes it work. So anytime you're doing a silhouette shot like this, you need to have them looking profile to you. And the posing really matters in this, because if her hand or arm is connected to her body, it's going to look like she doesn't have one. She's just got a funny shaped hip. So you need to separate the arms from the body, stuff like that. So
yeah, and when you're doing this with couples, you also need to make sure that their faces are not overlapping at all, or they're not touching, like their noses aren't touching or their foreheads aren't touching. Otherwise, they're just going to look like one giant blob. So you want to make sure that their faces are separate. They need to be looking at each other so that you're getting the profile like Nick said, but you don't want them touching, or else everything's just going to kind of run together. You can have their bodies touching or their arms wrapped around each other or something, but make sure that you keep their heads separate, their faces separate, so that you have two distinct faces looking at each other or looking away from each other, or whatever, kind of look you're going for.
Yeah, it turns out in portraits, faces are important. So you always want to make sure that if you can't see the detail, of the face pointing at you, you need to see the detail of it, of the profile of it,
the shape of it.
Exactly. Because noses and things like that, it turns out it's something that we like to see on a face. You don't want the Voldemort face. So yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, posing is really important too. Like when you're looking at this image of her, you have her posed in a way to where she kind of has her hip out and her arms are out, and then her dress is out going the opposite way. So it very much looks like really smooth and sexy. If you just had her kind of standing straight and her dress wasn't out and her hips were straight, it would not look as good. Because of that silhouette and that backlight, you really have to make sure that you're posing them in a way that's really accentuating the light and accentuating the curves in their body, or else they're just going to look, like a straight statue standing there.
Yeah, when you're silhouetting, really the shape is all you have. You don't have any kind of emotion showing through the face or anything like that. It's not about that. It's about shapes. So in this photo, it's about the shapes of the barrel and then the shape of the person. So if she was standing there looking very stiff, it's just not going to translate well. And luckily, like, I didn't have to do a whole lot of posing. She's really good at posing herself. That's always a good thing for Nick. Those are the best. Because let's be honest, let's have a moment of real talk here. When Nick Page, looking like I do, tries to show a girl how to pose sexy, it just looks pretty ridiculous. It's always good for a smile and a laugh, but me trying to mimic that pose is just probably the funniest thing a person would ever see. So it's better.
Oh my gosh, I have to see this.
It's always better if they pose themselves rather than Nick like cocking a hip out and like putting his hand up in his hair. Nobody needs to see that. So
I need to see it.
Yeah, I need to do a posing video just so I can like walk people through some really sexy poses.
You absolutely need to do that.
Yes. And by the way, another tangent. This is going to be a show of tangents. Annalise has somehow cornered me into doing a boudoir shoot.
Yes.
Because she cornered me. She tricked me. It's terrible. But I need to think up some kind of theme for my boudoir shoot. They're making a calendar with all the prominent people, and I'm going to be Mr. March, I think. So
that's so great.
I need like a chicken to like be petting or something. I don't know. Anyway, we digress.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Yes, we do digress. Okay, so more multiple light setups. The photo that I have with the couple making out under the fireworks, that was a 2-light setup. And super easy setup. I had both speedlights were bare, by the way. I had one speedlight behind them, backlighting them, and then one on a light stand or a monopod or something. My assistant, again, was holding it up and kind of over top of them. Both bare, super easy setup. And the one behind them was actually laying on the ground, maybe about 10 feet away from them. So it wasn't even on a stand at all. So literally we ran outside, we threw the light on the ground, put them in that spot. I had my assistant already had the other light in her hand. We took maybe 2 shots, boom, done. Like it was so easy, so simple. And that is a quick and easy way to get a really beautifully lit shot.
That's awesome. So my next shot is actually, I guess it's a 3-light setup. This is the shot of the couple in front of the old iconic barn. Another wedding shot. I feel like that's kind of the theme of the day. But so in this particular shot, I had Annalise again with the softbox on the end of a monopod, booming it right over the top of them, like literally like 6 inches away from their heads. And then I had a second speedlight illuminating the face of the barn, because you can't just have the dark barn in the background because it's just going to look like a big ominous blob. So I needed to illuminate the front side of the barn to show, hey, this is a barn. And then the third speedlight is basically just adding a little bit of rim light, backlighting the couple a little bit. It's off camera left, another bare speedlight. And again, I had to mask out Annalise from the shot. So this is 2 shots combined. Plus I had to do a little bit of cloning, because in order to illuminate the face of that barn, I had a speedlight like pointed up at it, and it was in frame. So I had to clone that out. So 2 shots combined with a little bit of clone stamp magic, and voila, we have a romantic couple with a purple sky. So nice. Yes.
Okay, my next one is another 2-light setup, very similar to my firework one. I had a light on the ground just behind the bride's feet, maybe 3 feet away, pointing up at them kind of. And then I had my assistant off to the side with the light pointing up and over. I think there's like a pattern here. It's always like up and over. Creates really nice light. Not directly over top of them, but off to the side a little bit and pointing down on them a little bit. And I love this photo because the background is just so dark and really rich. And then the light on them is just really beautiful and even and soft. And I did this with the mag sphere. So again, going back to that mag sphere, I really love that thing. It's so easy, so portable, quick, and small, and it produces a really nice light. Like this light here is beautiful. I would do shots like this all the time, just by being able to throw the mag sphere on my Speedlight, and it takes like 2 seconds to do that. So super easy, super convenient, and produces really nice results.
Yeah. And, that backlight that you add in that, it doesn't seem like it's doing much, and it's really not, but it just adds just enough separation from the dark couple to that dark background. So anytime you have, somebody that is against the dark background, just adding that little bit of backlight really separates them from it, and it makes it a 2D image look 3D. And it's really important. Exactly. So I guess my next shot is going to be this crazy gelled warrior guy. So talking a little bit about using gels. This is before I started using the MagMod stuff. But in this particular shot, I had several things going on. I had this warrior guy with all the body paint and stuff, which is fun in itself, but I added smoke grenades. We took these smoke grenades out into the forest, and then I had somebody run through the background and a little bit in the foreground, just back and forth with that, spreading that smoke around. And then I had to backlight that smoke, or else it's not going to be illuminated. So to illuminate the smoke, I backlit it with a pair of speedlights, one on either side, probably about 20 feet back, shooting kind of diagonally back at my subject. And on those, I put blue gels. That way it would... Actually, no, I did not put blue gels on those. Those are just bare speedlights. And what's making it so blue is that I had put a really heavy, I think 3 full CTO gels on my key light, which was just a shoot through umbrella. And when I hit him with all of that really amber colored light, by the time I counteract for that and I start to neutralize it by going down to this is like 2200 Kelvin, it turns all those other speedlights and the ambient light really, really blue. So it adds that really blue ambience to it. And then you get him with a fairly natural looking skin tone. And it just creates that color contrast between the really rich amber and the really blue. So yeah, that's 3 speedlights, a key light really high above him. It's like directly above him, shooting down. That way you're getting the shadows across his muscles, under his brow. Those dramatic shadows kind of define all the muscles. And then those 2 speedlights way back behind, shooting back at him, backlighting that smoke and illuminating it and making it look like smoke rather than just a wall of stuff. Because if you hit smoke with front light, it just you can't see through it. It doesn't look translucent. But if you backlight it, it starts to look like it's supposed to look. It looks like smoke. So that's that setup.
We've talked about this a lot. Anytime you see photos, I'm always picturing these ones where the bride is getting ready and the hairdresser is spraying the hairspray on her. And you can see the hairspray coming out of the can. It's because it's backlit. Or if you see, a couple in the rain and you can see their raindrops, it's because it's backlit. So we've said this so many times, but it's really important to remember when you're trying to get some sort of liquid, I guess, to appear in a photo, you need to make sure it's backlit. So rain, snow, fog, mist, hairspray, even like powder, loose powder that women wear, you can really make that stand out in a photo by backlighting it. Right.
Like, for example, if you have like a sparkler send-off kind of thing and you backlight that, suddenly you see all the smoke and all the ambience. Backlighting just adds ambience to a photo. That's why we like looking into the sun during sunset. And, it just has that mystical atmospheric quality. You can mimic that by backlighting your portraits.
Exactly. The last two that I want to talk about are actually two that I mentioned last week. And I wanted to actually show the examples of this. So the first one is the headshot. It's a really simple headshot, super easy setup. So what I did was I had two speedlights, one on either side, and I had white sheets hanging in front of either speedlight. I had them kind of pulled out in a rectangular shape. It's just a bed sheet, simple bed sheet. And then I was shooting the speedlight through the bed sheet. And then I was kind of shooting I was in the middle of the two bed sheets. So essentially I had two large strip boxes, DIY or makeshift strip boxes on either side of him. And I had the speedlights at slightly different power so that there is still a little bit of depth and a little bit of, shadow and things like that. If you have them at equal power, it's going to look like a flat light. But by doing that with the two lights on either side and shooting through the sheets or a strip box or some sort of modifier, you're going to get really cool catch lights and you're going to get really interesting light.
Yeah. Beautiful light. Really soft, even light vertically. Yeah. You get those shadows going across the face. So there's still that dimension. Really gorgeous light. Right. And then the other one I wanted to talk about is actually using creative gels to create some interesting color. So Nick talked about using like the white balance gels to balance things out, but you can also use creative gels and really add pops of color in there. So I have two images here. One is of a girl and then one is of a dress. And on both of these, I used two speedlights. I used two speedlights with gels on them. The one with the dress, I had a third speedlight actually lighting the dress and keeping some of the white color in there. But by using the creative gels, the blue and the pink on both of these, you just create some interest and some depth that you're not going to get with natural light. So by adding, for example, the one in the dress, by adding the two speedlights on either side of the dress, the tulle on the dress and the top of the dress really had some pops of color in there. And then I was able to maintain a lot of the white on the dress by using a third speedlight, kind of front lit almost, to make sure that there was some actual light on the dress as well. And I think we've mentioned this before, when these gels really shine, when I like to use them is at like a reception during the dancing. It's so fun to just throw those back and then shoot back into them. And it creates this really nightclubby backlit look that it works really well for like people partying and having fun. Just adding those little bits of color can really save a venue because sometimes they haven't paid to have really cool lighting. So just make your own with a couple of these speedlights. Yeah.
And that's really important because we love when people have uplighting and there's some color on the walls and it just looks really nice. But sometimes there aren't, colors and lights and it just looks boring. It might just be a plain white wall or just some sort of dull wall. So like Nick said, by adding those gels in there and adding some color and some dimension, your photos are going to be so much more interesting.
Agreed.
All right, guys. Well, hopefully this was some useful information, and I hope that you guys will kind of be able to tie some of this into the discussions we had last week about the modifiers. If you guys have any questions or want to chat more about this, feel free to post in our Facebook group. So if you go to Facebook and search Portrait Session Podcast Listeners, you'll find us there. Nick, where can people find you if they want to hunt you down?
You can find me on Facebook. Just do a search for Nick Page, or you can find me on Instagrizzle, Nick Page Photography, or my website, nickpagephotography.com.
Cool. And you guys can find me online, on Facebook, on Instagram at Erica K Photography or at UA Creative Photo. All right, guys, have a good week, and we will talk to you next week.